Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kim and this is Expedition 3 Pages, and today I have a HRCYED update. So this is my update of what I read for HRCYED between weeks 3 and 6 of the readathon. Yeah, it's a little bit late, it's a little bit overdue, but I'm excited to share with you what I read and what prompts are now fulfilled. Okay, so let's get right into it. First up, I read Wonder by Palacio, and this book I ended up giving 4.25 stars to. I really enjoyed it. In this book, you're following a young boy called August who's got a facial difference. You start seeing August's story from when he starts middle school. He's never been to school before. He's used to being homeschooled, so it's like a massive step for him to join middle school. And you basically see what life is like for him as a child with a facial difference and how people respond to him, how the children treat him, how adults treat him. And initially you see the book from his point of view, but as you move through the novel, the point of view switches up and you get to see it from his sister's point of view and friends' point of views and things like that. I definitely did find it emotional at times, which is to be expected with a story like this, just listening to the hardships that August has had to go through and continues to go through as he moves through the world. But it's also a middle grade book, so it's also really uplifting as well. And I had a really nice time reading it. I was shocked to learn that the author didn't actually have any kind of personal connection to anybody with a facial difference, but just from the tiny bit that I read, it does seem like that she did a lot of research before writing the book. But yeah, I think I've only ever heard like good things come from this book. And there's a movie as well, and I watched the movie and I really like that as well. There are some slight changes to it, but not like huge amounts, and I actually quite liked the things that they kind of switched up in the movie. And there was only a couple of things where I was like, okay, I wish they'd done that quite the same. I actually do think that the book and the movie are actually great for children to watch. I mean, they're aimed for children to watch, but I do think that they're really good. And I liked the way the writing from the children's point of view, it did feel like children to me. Sometimes when you read books written by adults, the children don't necessarily feel like children, but I felt like in this book they did, which I liked. So yeah, I really like this one. I can highly recommend it. And I did use it for 2 prompts in HRCYED. So the first one, I've used it for titular counting. So this is going to be my one-word title for that prompt. I found it difficult to find other things to place it into, so titular counting it goes. I already spun titular counting on the wheel, so that is one that I'm trying to fulfill, so I thought may as well fulfill it here. And the other one that I'm going to use it for is actually bookception. Bookception is the prompt where you have to read a book and then you have to read a book that is mentioned in that book that you read, if you know what I mean. So in Wonder, August's sister is praised by her dad for reading War and Peace. So that's right, I'm going to read War and Peace. I've read Anna Karenina and I survived that and I enjoyed that. I do know that War and Peace is probably going to be a lot more challenging to read just based on the subject matter, but I have hopes that I am going to like it. And I feel like, you know, this is just a 2-book prompt, so you don't have to keep going through. Although, funnily enough, like when I first started BookTube, I wanted to start this as a challenge for myself, where I wanted to pick a book and then read a book that was mentioned in that book, and then read a book that was mentioned in that book, and then continue on and see how much of a chain I could get. I can't remember who I wrote to, but some of my first BookTube friends, I wrote to them and I was like, should we do a readathon like this? And then I think I hadn't had any experience with setting stuff like that up before, so I just didn't do it in the end. But yeah, it's funny that Q's done this prompt now because it reminded me of that brainwave that I wanted to do. So maybe in the future I will try and do a video like that, where I read a book and then try and see how long the chain is that I can go. But it's going to be really hard. This is also why I didn't do it before, because I feel like you have to be really strategic about the books you pick to start with, and then try and get a long list from one book, and then try and be strategic with the book that you pick next, just to see how long you can get the chain. But yeah, I am definitely interested in doing that. I think it'll be fun. Bookception is a great name for it as well. I wasn't going to call it that. I think I was going to call it book chain or something. Anyway, so I'm going to use Wonder for that, and then I'm going to attempt to read War and Peace. So wish me luck. Next up, I finished Black Ships Before Troy, which is by Rosemary Sutcliffe, and this I also listened to. I listen to most of my books. I don't know if you can tell. Sometimes I do both, read and listen, but mainly I do listen to books. This was narrated by Robert Glenister, and this essentially is a retelling of the Iliad for a younger audience. So it was basically all about the war at Troy and trying to get Helen back and all of that kind of stuff. And the reason that I read it is because I wanted to read this before then going to see the Odyssey, because I heard that the more knowledge you have about the Iliad before you see the Odyssey, the better, because it kind of like goes from one to the next. And so that's why I read it. And then I never saw the Odyssey because Spencer and I got the flu. And then we just never organised ourselves to go after that. So the week we were going to go, we got sick, and then that was it. And yeah, I quite enjoyed listening to this. It was very much like this is the story of the Iliad, and moving through very kind of simply without going into too much depth of character or anything, which is to be expected from like this kind of storytelling, I guess. But I did like it, and I'm glad that I chose it to refresh my memory of the Iliad, because what I had forgotten is I had actually read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, which is also a retelling of the Iliad. So I did actually know quite a bit of information, but it was nice to get a refresh because I read that years ago and just remember all the character names and everything and like who was on what side and things like that. And so for this, I decided to use it for one of the not so secret prompts. I decided to use it for Missed Childhood Chapter Book. Is that what it's called? Yeah. And that's because this book was originally released in 1992 and I was 8 in 1992 or something. So yeah, I could have listened to this then and I missed out on it. I think that's what that prompt means. I wasn't actually about for the secret prompts in last year's HRCYED, so I wasn't actually there for the explanation. So I'm just purely assuming that that's what that prompt means. If it doesn't mean that, let me know and I can change it for something else. But yeah, I'm using Black Ships Before Troy for the Missed Childhood Chapter Book. Hey guys, excuse the cut-in, but I'm just editing the video and I realised that I didn't actually tell you the second prompt that I'm using for Black Ships Before Troy. So I'm actually using it for the I must endeavour to acquire these creatures prompt, and I'm using it for the fighting monster. Because if you know anything about the Iliad, you know there is a lot of fighting in this book. And actually what I didn't say in my review of the book was that it is really violent. And I know it's for children, and I know children can probably read a lot more violent things than like my brain thinks they can, but I was actually quite shocked at how violent it was. Then again, it is a war. So yeah, I'm using it for fighting monster. I just wanted to pop in here and say that. Okay, so next up I finished The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. This is a play. My first play I've read in a really long time, so I'm so pleased that I got to it. And I actually ended up also watching the movie version for this after I read the play. And I can't remember what year it was from. I think it was from the 90s. And it had Reese Witherspoon in it and Colin Firth in it. So it's that version that I watched. And I quite liked it. It was kind of crazy, but I quite liked it. So the play itself is like a really kind of funny premise. So I did end up actually reading this out loud with my partner because it's a play and I guess it's supposed to be like spoken out loud. And what we found is when we were reading it, there were parts that we found really funny reading the actual play that didn't necessarily come through when we watched the movie. And I don't know if that's just because of some of the acting. Like some of the acting was great. The main person who played, let's just look it up. Oh no, I've just looked it up and the film was actually 2002, so yeah, not the 90s. But Rupert Everett played Algernon, and Algernon's character, when we were reading it out, we laughed quite a lot at his character. He was just quite a funny bloke and a bit over the top and all the rest of it. And we didn't find that in the movie. So yeah, that was kind of disappointing actually, was that the Algernon character in the film just wasn't as funny as I thought that he was going to be. So basically you're following these two guys who are friends. So you're following Algernon and he is visited by his friend Ernest, except that his friend Ernest is actually called Jack. It's a little bit complicated, but he lives with people in the country and he has a ward that knows him as Uncle Jack and everything. And what happens is he says to them that he's going to London to look after his brother called Ernest who lives in London, and then when he gets to London he is Ernest and then everyone knows him as Ernest and all the rest of it, and he meets a girl who he wants to marry. And then Algernon is the cousin of this girl that Jack wants to marry, and he finds out about the fact that Jack is his real name, and so then he decides that he's going to go to the country and he's going to pretend he's Ernest. And then it goes on from there. Essentially, they both end up in the country and they're both trying to pursue these two different girls, women, and they're both trying to pretend that their name is Ernest. And yeah, it's good. I enjoyed reading it. I feel like the ending was like, everything about it is kind of ludicrous and very exaggerated, especially in the film. Like they added some things that was even more over the top than the play. But it was fun. It was funny. It wasn't annoying. I didn't find it annoying. I was worried because it was kind of farcical that I wasn't going to like it because I don't usually like farces, but I thought it was funny. I did laugh out loud a few times. So yeah, I ended up giving the play 4 stars because I did enjoy it a lot. So yeah, I'm going to use The Importance of Being Earnest in titular counting as well. So that is going to count for 5 letters in the title. And I'm also going to use it for another one of the not so secret prompts. I'm going to use it for pun in the title. I didn't think that I was ever going to find a pun. And then when I was looking through the prompts, I was like, actually, this works. Anyway, so that's what I'm using it for. So the not so secret prompts is starting to fill up, which is good because there's 12 of them. Okay, my battery's running out, so I'm going to try and whiz through these pretty quickly. But the next book that I finished was Death of the Author by Nadia Corafor, and I read this for a book club, my Crafting 3 Pages book club, which we actually had last night. I'm currently filming on Monday and we had it on Sunday. And yeah, I really like this one. I gave this one 5 stars. I really liked it. After having a chat about it, I'm wondering if I rated it too highly. I think I got overexcited about things that happened, which I can't talk about because they're massive spoilers, but I got definitely like hooked in with something and I was like, this is amazing, I love this. And I think I do still love it, but I do also take the criticisms of the book that we discussed yesterday. So in this book you are following Zelu, who is a writer who is disabled. She is paralysed in her legs, so she has to be in a wheelchair. And when you first meet her, she's at her sister's wedding. And then when she's at the wedding, she finds out that she's been fired from her job. She finds out that her book is not being picked up anywhere, or she basically accepts that her book is going nowhere, no one wants it. But I think she loses her flat as well. Basically, loads of things happen and she goes back to her parents' house and she kind of keeps herself to herself and she's not in a very good place at all. So she sits at her computer and she just starts writing. And what she writes is this science fiction novel, and she's not a science fiction writer, but she just writes it. What does it tell you in the synopsis? Yeah, so it does tell you the science fiction drama is about androids and it's about AI and it's about humanity once it's been extinct because, you know, we didn't listen to climate change stuff, which is looking more and more likely to be reality at this point. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really tell you too much, so I won't go into it too much. But you are following a contemporary storyline where you're following Zelu and her family and what happens once she writes this book. And you're also following the chapters of the actual sci-fi story, and I definitely did prefer the sci-fi story, but I was interested in Zelu's life as well. Zelu herself is definitely like a morally grey character. She does things that I do not approve of. She does things that annoy me. She keeps herself very guarded, and I think that that adds to some of the maybe more confrontational moments that she has in her life. But she's a very interesting character to read about because she's kind of not like any character that I've ever read before, and she definitely does put herself and her wants before other things, and so you get to see her try these new experiences and things like that. So much of this book is interesting. So much of the topics that are discussed are interesting, and I can't talk about any of them, which is frustrating. And in the robot storyline, you're following Ankara, who is a robot living in Nigeria, and they're basically just the remnants of humanity because humanity built all these robots and then died off, whatever. And Ankara's a human, so she's in like a humanoid body, and she very much wants to learn about the stories of humanity. She calls herself a scholar. I'm saying she. Is she a she or she a it? I can't remember now. Basically, Ankara, they want to consume as many stories as possible so they can learn as much about the human race as possible. And then there are other AI beings in the world that actually don't want the bodies. They want to evolve past what humanity had envisioned for them. They don't want to be stuck in an actual physical being, whether it be humanoid body or not. They would rather whiz around and kind of be freer. And there's a tension between them which leads to conflict. There's also a bigger storyline that's going on about these other robots that are out in space and things like that, and I loved it. I loved that storyline a lot. I think maybe I will just stick to my 5 stars because I do think the book is clever and I had a really good time reading this. I was very intrigued a lot of the time and just wanted to keep reading it. So yeah, I did like it. I'm going to keep my 5 stars. What did I use this for? I'm going to be using this for the Choose Your Own Curriculum prompt for English literature because I think this is perfect. This is all about a writer and you're reading the writer's story. So if that's not English lit, I don't know what is, you know? And then I'm also using it for, drumroll, titular counting. So this is going to go in for 4-word title for titular counting. And yeah, that's definitely filling up now, so that's exciting. And then finally, the last book that I read before the end of week 6 was White Holes by Carlo Rovelli, and this is a little non-fiction book all about the research that is going on at the moment by Carlo Rovelli and his scientific colleague called Hell into white holes. Did that make sense? I feel like the sentence was weird. They've both come up with a theory. Well, it was Hell who had the idea, and then they've been working together on the theory of how a black hole could transition into a white hole. And I really like this book. I gave it a, what did I give it? It must be over a 4, but I don't think it was quite 5 stars. Yeah, I gave this one 4.5 stars. I thought it was really great actually, because this book, it's not like your usual factual science book. Like, this is all speculation. There's science in here, as he kind of talks a little bit about black hole science and all of that kind of thing. But mainly this is speculative science. This is his theory, this is his and Hell's theory, which involves quantum physics, it involves quantum tunneling. So if you know what that is, their theory is kind of like the black hole gets so dense it turns into like this Planck star. So I'm not actually sure I'm going to be able to explain this. It's like space-time itself gets so small that then it's able to quantum tunnel into like a backwards time. I say backwards time, a reverse time, which then turns into a white hole. So like, it's like time is going in the opposite direction for the white hole as the black hole, which is all mathematically sound. It's just, is it physically sound? We don't know. And one of the things that I really liked about this is just Carlo Rovelli's like enthusiasm. It definitely just spills out of the page. Like that he just loves this topic so much. I do think at times, especially at the beginning, there was a few things he said where I felt like he's like beating on other people a little bit, like a little bit condescending and arrogant, I guess. But I don't know if that's his intent. Probably not his intent, but that is how it kind of came across to me anyway. It's just a little bit like, well, you know, even some of the scholars don't know what they're talking about kind of thing, which is probably true, but it was kind of said in quite a blunt way, I guess. But his enthusiasm for the subject and also his enthusiasm for like discovering new things in science shines through. Throughout this book, he uses quotes from Dante's The Divine Comedy. So he's basically kind of drawing the parallel between Dante going in, discovering what is in hell, and then coming out again as the same kind of thing as if we could imagine what it would be like going into a black hole and coming out of a white hole, which when I read some of the reviews, some people didn't like that, but I actually liked it because this was definitely more about the excitement of being a scientist when you don't know the answers. That opens it up a little bit more to be a little bit more poetic. I guess it's kind of dreamy. Like, there is obviously, like, there is mathematics behind it. He is building these theories not from just flimsy dreams, but it does have that kind of feel to it a little bit. Like, you know, we won't know until it's proven. Might never know if it's true or not. And, you know, there are loads of people that disagree, and there's loads of other theories and things like that. That is what I liked about it, and that's why I quite liked the comparison to Dante's story as going into hell. It's definitely written in a way for someone who isn't a scientist to understand, but it's also like complicated stuff. But what I like about what he does is that when he makes his final point about something, he says it in like 5 different ways. And so that means there's like a higher chance of, if you don't quite get it with one way that he said it, that you're going to get it with a different way that he said it, if you know what I mean. And I quite like that tactic coming from someone who's a popular scientist writer, because I think that's quite helpful. So yeah, anyway, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was good. I'd probably reread it again, and it's so cute. I like the cover. So for this one, I decided to use it also for Choose Your Curriculum, and I'm using it for science. So I think I've only got 3 more subjects I need to find now, which is exciting. And the other one that I'm going to be fulfilling is one that I think is going to be hard for me to fulfill, and that is Rainbow of Words. I do think it's going to be hard to find books with colours in the title, so I was glad when I realised that this covers white, and we've got the first one ticked off the list. I only read 5 books in 4 weeks, which is not good enough. I need to be reading 8 books in 4 weeks if I want to stay on track for my plan. I'm already like behind on HRCYED quite a bit, but I have been trying to come up with ways to read more, and I think it's working. I would love to know if you've read any of these books and if you've enjoyed them, and I'd also love to know how HRCYED is going for you if you're joining in. So please do let me know down in the comments, and I'll chat to you soon. All right, see you later guys, bye.